Hello, pianists, colleagues, teachers, and friends. Today we're talking about how to teach the Bach Prelude in C major from the beginning of the Well-Tempered Clavier. Here's what it sounds like. Hi friends and teachers and colleagues. If we haven't met before, my name is Jana Williamson and welcome to my home piano studio in the suburbs of Chicago. When I originally made this video about the Bach C major prelude, I realized afterwards that it was too long, so I've split it up into two videos. You are now watching part 2 of 2. If you missed last week's part 1, please click up there in the corner or in the description below to find that video. In that one, I talked a lot about the harmony in this piece and how I would teach a student to block the chords. I'm going to pick up that discussion right now and talk about voice leading within that harmonic structure. I'm also going to give some tips about technique, and be sure to stick around to the end where I talk about whether or not to use the damper pedal. All right, let's get into it. You can also combine that with listening to individual voices, like where is the bass line going? Where is the top going? So the very, very top is just, that's almost like a melody. It's not really a melody, but you can kind of combine that then with the bass and listen to that contrary motion. So there's lots to dissect in here and listen and not just be playing note, 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 but listening for how things do little micro movements. Last thing about the bass line, it is important for students to know the term pedal point and to understand that that came from organ playing. Of course, Johann Sebastian Bach now is known as a composer, but during his lifetime, he was known more as being an excellent organist. He competed against other organists in competitions. He was also always doing work on his organ, on the physical instrument itself, and he was definitely an innovator in that. And many students in the 21st century have never seen an organ in real life, so showing them some, video online of a beautiful organ piece by Bach or anyone else would be great. But a pedal point is simply a low note that is sustained for a long time or repeated many times, that just gives this one singular note at the bottom while the harmony changes above it. And there are many examples of this in Bach's music. And of course on the organ, you would just slap your foot down on the pedal and then your hands would get to do all kinds of different things on top of that. In this piece and in other preludes that he wrote, it's the fact that, the lowest note in the left hand stays the same for a long time while the harmony changes. And I think this is most obvious once you get down to the low G in measure 24. It's just the continual G, the repeated G, even though there's some interesting things going on. And that's one of the big reasons why measure 32 is so satisfying when we finally go down to that low C, which, by the way, was probably the lowest note on Bach's harpsichord. And it's finally this release from that pedal point G that's just been building and building while the harmony changes. And then, we get to go to the C. As far as technically playing this goes, we are listening for clarity in the 16th notes in the right hand part and just this very even feel, while also bringing out the little things that you want to highlight occasionally here and there. If students are having trouble with that, two things. First of all, they should not be isolating their fingers and having a stiff wrist and forearm. That's going to cause tension and not sound very good. So a little bit more of a rolling motion, wrist rolling motion, or, just allowing lifting after you play. It's 2 quick rolls if you're going to think that wrist roll motion, and that will allow for a more gentle sound, for a release from any tension that's being built up, and for clarity of the individual 16th notes. If your student is having trouble with that, they can also practice with different practice techniques, such as playing all separate, to really hear if they're, playing not clearly and cleanly on one of the notes. They can practice with rhythms. accents, you've got 6 notes in a row there, so you could migrate the accent, shift it to different notes, the second note, the third note, the fourth note, and really make sure that's being very, very clean. Lastly, there's an argument all the time about how Bach should be played on the modern piano. I firmly believe, along with many other people, that if Bach had a modern piano, he would have loved experimenting with it and doing lots of interesting things. This is partly because, as I already said, he was always experimenting with the organ and trying to improve the instruments on which he played. So many performers play this with damper pedal. The alternative to that is to simply make sure you're doing the finger pedaling as it's supposed to be and holding your left hand for the full 2 beats. That will actually give a little bit of the same effect as using the damper pedal. I personally think it's perfectly fine to use some damper on the pedal, knowing that you're playing a modern piano, if that's what you're doing. And truthfully, if you sustain notes on the harpsichord, there is actually a little bit of that feeling of the resonance continuing that is in some ways similar to the effect we get with the damper pedal on the modern piano. Now, I will just say, I'm not a huge fan of 100% depression of the damper pedal, like all the way down and just completely legato pedaling. I would prefer to play this with a little bit more like a shimmer, like a half pedal or 3/4 pedal. So it is worth experimenting with that. And just know, if your student plays this in any kind of evaluative event, that the evaluator, the judge, may have different ideas about pedaling or not pedaling than you and your student do. I didn't mention which edition I'm using, but I am just looking at my text of this. I own the Henley of the Well-Tempered Clavier. If you are interested in purchasing that, please just go right to the description and click the link there. Don't forget to check out the rest of my resources I have for you. If you have pieces you'd like me to cover, leave a comment there, and I wish you all the best in your teaching.